Now, it's tough enough to be a woman in politics, but my next guest has had more than her fair share of pressure and prejudices to contend with. MEP Nikki Sinclaire has recently, as you've probably seen, because it's been very high profile, come out as the UK's first transsexual parliamentarian. Nikki recently revealed she was born a boy and lived as a man into her early 20s, and she joins me in the studio now. Morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here.
Pleasure.
So, why have you decided to make this revelation now? What's prompted it?
I think there's a couple of reasons. There wasn't not one defining reason. The main reason was there was a threat by my former party UKIP, because I was elected as a UKIP, your listeners will know, I was elected as a UKIP MEP, but fell out with UKIP over their extremist links in the European Parliament, links with Holocaust deniers, etc., etc. So there was threats from their press department that this could be leaked in the run-up to the European elections next year. And I was terrified of getting a phone call one day from a newspaper and saying, we're going to run this story tomorrow, what's your quote?
So you've taken control of the situation.
Taken control, wrote the book, explained my story so someone else wasn't going to tell my story. And I wouldn't be under threat by UKIP. And it wasn't just UKIP, there was also some journalists that were always, picking at this. And I thought I needed to tell the
You
story.
must have kind of expected that, though, isn't it? Because, I mean, that's as they say, I mean, politics is just a branch of showbiz, isn't it, really? I mean, you must have sort of...
For ugly people.
For ugly people. I didn't want to say that because I thought I'm not going to use the whole quote because that sounds insulting, but you know what I mean. You know the quote. So there was always that danger. That must have always... Sure. Even when you went into politics, you must have had this at the back of your mind.
I always knew. And the book deals with the fact that I wanted to be a politician from the age of 10, but never thought I could be because of this. And somehow, some way, I made the journey and became elected. And of course I knew that it could be an issue on day one. But it wasn't, and I was really grateful for that. But I wanted to show that I could do the job without attack. We all know the media tags that are put onto it, rather nasty, I think. And it kind of deflects from what the politician is actually trying to achieve. Now, I've been 4 years as an MEP, and I think I've got an exceptional track record. I'm listed as an independent source as the most hardworking MEP in the actual European Parliament. I'm also got the only MEP in the whole country to have a mobile surgery that goes city to city and town to town. We're in Worcester on Friday in Angel Square, so people can come and say hello on Friday. So I'm very active. Was the only politician that forced David Cameron to the dispatch box about Europe, about a referendum, when he said he wanted to stop banging on about Europe. I collected the 100,000 signatures along with my team and many other people, and we forced the government to discuss this issue.
Because just in case people don't know, your party is now the We Demand a Referendum Now party, isn't it?
Exactly, because we don't believe that you can push this issue. I mean, you've had people saying, about the investment and so forth. The most pro-European argument is saying that the EU we're dependent on the EU for a lot of our investment, which I totally disagree with. But if you think that, if that is true, surely if you're going to push the referendum to 2017, you're going to cause 3 or 4 years of uncertainty. Who's going to invest in uncertainty? So I think that counters that argument.
I mean, you say you've got the mobile surgery and you go out and talk to lots of people. Really, genuinely, are people that bothered by Europe? Is this the burning issue that people talk about?
I think it's among the burning issues. I do believe, obviously, people are worried about, obviously, the economy, which obviously is linked with Europe, of course, but obviously linked with they care about the health service, they care about education, and they do care about those things. But Europe, they do feel frustrated about Europe. They feel that what can they do? They feel they've been lied about Europe. They're not happy with Britain's relationship with the European Union. And what I'm saying, although I'm Eurosceptic and want us to leave the EU, what I'm saying is that the best thing we can do as a country is make a final decision about this sooner rather than later. Because if we should stay in the European Union and people decide to stay in the European Union, then we should make it work for us. I think we're currently in an awful halfway house, which is neither in nor out. So that's why I care so passionately about it. And these are the issues that I wanted to show as an MEP that I could achieve on. Also, food banks. I've delivered food to over 3.5 tons of food across the West Midlands that my team's collected in conjunction with a leading supermarket. We've done that, so I've got a huge track record of achievement. I'm not quite sure whether I could have achieved all of that had I had the tag before my name. And that's what, in the book, it makes the plea, please let me get on with my job. I've shown I can do the job. I'm just the same as anyone else. I care about my constituents. I go to work for my constituents. Really, does my private life matter? And it's a terrible thing because
Well, there's obviously yourself, of course, but I mean, in the last couple of days, there's the whole Tom Daley thing, isn't there? I mean, it's become it's become a huge debate about something that, frankly, in the 21st century shouldn't even be a thing, should it?
Well, I need to put down a marker of a differentiation here, because one of the things I was just going on to say is what I've divulged isn't my sexuality, because people mistakenly think this is an extension of sexuality. What I've had to divulge is what no one should divulge, is their medical history. What I suffered with was a medical condition that was diagnosed, and I had a course of treatment, which is what's called a gender reassignment operation.
Well, let's go back a little bit, because I think there'll be people listening who don't quite get it. They'll which is perfectly understandable, isn't it? Because it is a huge thing.
Absolutely.
No one. I mean, I don't know. Thank heavens, I don't know, and I don't want to know what it must be like. But just explain to us, when did you realise that you were in the wrong body?
At the age of 3.
That early.
I couldn't articulate the words. Obviously, at the age of 3, I knew there was something fundamentally wrong with me.
What sort of things?
Just a feeling of uncomfortableness, that something wasn't right. And at the age of 5, I began to realise that I should have been a girl. And intrinsically, I knew that I couldn't talk to anyone about this. I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, very, as you can imagine. But I was a very strong Catholic, and my religions, played a huge part in my life. So I'd pray to God and everything, that everything would be okay, and I was good, so why wouldn't my prayers be answered, and, all of that type of thing. But, so the childhood was, had all that trauma in it, and I knew, and as I was growing up between 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, this was a very strong feeling that I knew was inside of me, and I didn't know what to do about it. I couldn't speak to anyone. At the age of 11 and 12, I began much more of awareness. I didn't fit in at school. I was bullied at school. It's not my quote, but there's a quote from someone else's book, Caroline Cossey. She said, "Life was a game that I could not learn to play."
And I suppose, puberty must have been terrible, because then your body really starts changing, doesn't it?
It was. I never actually had full puberty, really, not as what probably you went through. For example, I never had to shave my face. I've never had to shave my face in my life.
Really?
Yeah. Later on, actually, it hasn't really publicised. I think this is an excuse that I ever said it's on broadcasting, but it's in the book, that it was later found many years afterwards that I had a chromosomal disorder.
So,
for example, a female is XX, you're XY. I had 3 X's and a Y.
Oh, okay. So hormonally and genetically, there is something different about you.
There is something, and when they did hormone tests, they found that I had actually less testosterone than the average woman. It was, so obviously there was something.
So clearly you were in the wrong body.
Clearly, and there's also been medical evidence taken in research done in Holland that has shown that deceased male to female transsexuals, when they've removed the brain is of a similar type of a female. So to put it in, it's kind of like having a female brain trapped in a male body, and that's kind of the cliche, but it's kind of true. It does explain it quite well.
And how? I mean, again, most people can't understand this, but I mean, try and explain how bad things were. How dark did things get for you?
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. I couldn't fit in at school. I used to skive school. As I said, I got bullied, had my tooth knocked out, which proved to be a fantastic thing because I became very independent. Something traumatic happened when I was 7. My dad was almost murdered in front of me. He was thrown over a 20-foot balcony right in front of my eyes, and I thought my dad had died. And I was the eldest of 4. We lived in a council estate, and it made me grow up. I write in the book, my childhood ended then, because I had to become very responsible. I was even washing cars to earn money to help pay for food because it got so terrible. So I grew up then. So in many ways, although that was so traumatic, it was helpful. It made me grow up, so I was able to deal with my gender problems at a much earlier age that I could. So I was able to go to libraries and read, and I found out a bit more information at probably an earlier age than most people did. And then I used to go into London. I was part of the new romantic scene, the clubs, the Camden Pallid Blitz, and all of that, and Steve Strange, and that was quite fun. Found myself at a party one day, broke up a party at Boy George's house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He just came in and said, "Who are you?" Anyway, so that was the kind of like, which was terrible. But the terrible thing was I went to my doctor at the age of 16, and my doctor says, "Grow up."
That's what they said to you?
Grow up, get over this, you'll be fine.
When was this? What year was this?
1984.
In the mid-80s. So, because we like to think things are a lot more enlightened now, but I mean, are they? Have things improved a lot now since then?
I think so. I mean, all this happened, the operation and everything happened more than 20 years ago, so I'm kind of slightly out of what's really happening now, because I got on with my life. But the doctor said, grow up or you'll end up in London as a drug addict and a prostitute. Which was
That's
fantastic.
helpful, isn't it?
Very helpful. And then I went to a self-help group, which was absolutely awful, really. And that was my own prejudices at the time. But I did get this number of the hospital in London. I phoned up the hospital, and the hospital says, "You need a referral from your doctor." I might have to find another doctor. And then they asked me my name and my date of birth, and they'd look out for the letter. And when I said my date of birth, they said, "Sorry, we can't see you till you're 21.
And you were how old at this point?
16.
Oh, wow. So that's...
and at 16, 21, 5 years is a life sentence.
Yeah, it's a huge length of time, isn't it? So what did you do for 5 years?
First of all, I mean, that was just... that was probably the worst. You asked me how worse did it get. There's two really bad. That was really bad. That was just black. It was just horrible. I didn't know what I was going to do.
It's your life stretching out before you, yeah?
Yeah, and I knew I couldn't exist, because one of the things that people don't understand also is the fact that at that time, that's when I was pretending to be somebody. That was not me. Every day I was having to get up and pretend to be this man, and I wasn't. And that was the act. So I desperately needed to be me. So, I got myself a job and did have things, went clubbing and, got into unsuccessful relationships.
I was just going to say, actually, did you have a partner during this for support, or friends and family? And
off and on. At this time I was attracted to men, but that wasn't successful because I wasn't a gay man. That's not who I was. Again, I was pretending to be something I was not. But I thought that's what I should be, because it was an easier. And of course, we're talking mid-80s, and then you had all the AIDS thing, which was a terrible time. I was gay bashed and all of this type of things, called an AIDS carrier, which obviously I wasn't. So yeah, then it moved on until I could eventually get to see that doctor at that hospital.
So you had to wait till you were 21?
Yeah, because they mixed it all up with homosexuality, which at that time was criminalised until the age of 21. So it was all mixed up, and it's nothing to do with homosexuality, but somehow the attitudes then mixed it up with that. So it's 21, and yeah, and so I eventually got to see this doctor, and this doctor told me, there's nothing wrong with you. Well, there is something wrong with you, but look, this is what's wrong with you, and there is a treatment. You can have a life. It's going to be difficult. There's lots of things to do. It's not going to be easy. And I went on the treatment.
And what's the process?
First of all, there's obviously a process that you actually obviously have to begin to live in the gender that you are. And that's quite a traumatic time to do that. There's obviously a hormone treatment.
Were you at any... Sorry, just before you carry on, any point up to that, were you living as a woman in secret, or were you just trying to fight it and be a man?
I was trying to fight to be a man. And the other thing that people don't really understand about this is, for me, it's not like transvestism. It's not about the clothes. Yeah, I mean, if anyone knows me, they know I'm in trousers all the time.
Yes, she is wearing trousers and a black jumper. Yeah,
it's not about the clothes at all. It's about who you are inside. And I kind of dress as any other woman of my age now, at the age of 45, and I did when I was kind of 18 or 19. But of course, it wasn't full time at that point. And after 21, it began to be. And it was a step-by-step process. It's not as easy as, obviously, a thing to do. You're socially changing, friends, new environment. And obviously, you've got to get a job. You've got to show that you can actually live this life. So I had to get a job. And that wasn't easy, but I did persevere, and I got a job. And eventually, I had the surgery, which was life-transforming.
You mentioned the book several times. What's the book called?
It's Never Give Up. And the reason why it's called that is because I've had so many different things in my life that I've seemed to overcome. And also, it's called Never Give Up because I did meet Margaret Thatcher, who we haven't talked about how I got involved with politics, but I got involved with politics at the age of 10 when Margaret Thatcher became Prime Minister. And I got to meet her and she told me to never give up. So that was part of it.
Down to Margaret.
Yeah.
Listen, we'll talk more about your politics and we'll get the rest of the story in just a few moments. See, Hereford and Worcester, I have Nikki Sinclaire still with me, MEP, and also, as we've been talking about, transsexual, and it's in her book. And we've talked quite a bit about your early life and your journey. Politics then. So Margaret Thatcher, all down to Mrs T.
Well, as I said, I grew up in a council estate, and the winter of discontent in the Labour government of 78, 79. Rubbish piling up, queuing for bed, fire brigade, queuing for bread, fire brigade on strike, ambulances on strike, absolutely terrible time. And my dad was a HGV driver, and he would always shout at the screen, about the Labour government. And I'd ask him, well, if the unions are for the working man and the Labour for the working man, why are they fighting? And he could never actually answer that. And then there was this very strong female role model, Margaret Thatcher. And I didn't really understand her politics, but she seemed to be saying that, if you stood up for yourself and you stood up on your own 2 feet and we did that as a country, we can move forward. So I kind of admired her strength. And she seemed to say also that if you worked hard, you can do anything you wanted. And I needed to do that. I knew that I wanted to achieve something. And she was telling me, if you work hard enough, you can do that. So I kind of bought in. And at the age of 10 in a council estate, I went door knocking, unofficially, to ask people to vote for Margaret Thatcher.
So you went door knocking for the Tories
in
at
a council
10.
estate.
I bet that went down well.
It went fantastically. But do you know what the difference is? By 1983, they were all supporters.
Yeah.
Because she had completely transformed. And, there'll be listeners of different views of Margaret Thatcher, and I accept that some people see her as a fantastic heroine, and others see her as...
Well, and also it's hindsight, isn't it? I mean, when you're talking about at the height of it, everyone bought into the vision, didn't they? It's only when you kind of look back at history and then you question her legacy, perhaps, that people have a different opinion. Yeah,
but so... for me, she proved to be a positive role model, someone who was a conviction politician, and we don't have conviction politicians anymore.
No, don't seem to, do they? They also kind of say the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what some of my supporters like about me, that I say what I think. I don't fall behind a party line, and I'm very much about conviction. It's about standing up for what I believe in, rather than being in a party.
Well, you have your own party.
Well, exactly. I think that says it, doesn't it?
So still in the studio with us, MEP Nikki Sinclaire. If you've only just turned on, you're probably aware of this because it's been quite a big news story. She has a book out, and she's told her story, the fact she was born a boy, had gender reassignment, and this was in your early 20s, wasn't it? I mean, because we didn't touch on that. How did you feel when you had the gender reassignment? Was it just like the kind of the lights went on and everything was normal? It
should have been, and it was to a degree, but then I almost died.
What happened?
I had a deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism. And many people actually died on the operating table with this from a heart attack. It's quite... It's a very difficult operation. And also the other thing to be said, and it's fortunately never happened to me, I've never been suicidal, but a huge amount of people commit suicide with this medical condition. It's absolutely... I wouldn't wish this on
Why is that?
It's a number of reasons, rejection... ridicule, depression, loneliness, all of that, can be a lethal cocktail, and it's I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. This isn't a choice that you would want to do. You really wouldn't, and I would obviously have rather been born without this.
And obviously you're in the world of politics, which is fairly cutthroat, isn't it? I think everyone realises that, and people will use anything they can to get a bit of political advantage, or any kind of advantage, really. And there has been speculation over your circumstances for many years, haven't there?
Yeah.
How did that feel when all that was going on?
Well, it was just, I kind of thought, well, this is no one else's business but mine. And I explained to you earlier why I felt I've had to do it now. And should I have had to? No. And I'm sure most of your listeners would think that I shouldn't have had to, that surely I should have been judged on the work that I do as an MEP, and a track record that I'm incredibly proud of.
So, obviously you've got all the work that's going on. You do plenty of stuff. You've got your mobile surgery mentioned earlier on. How do you fit everything in? Because you're a busy lady, aren't you?
Well, I break the EU Working Time Directive, which is 48 hours a week. I work about 70 hours. I literally really do work every day, and I absolutely love doing it. And I would do this job for nothing. I really would if I could afford to. I actually do put £30,000 of my post-tax salary back in to my work, because I do really feel passionately about representing people.
I've always wanted to ask a politician this. Is politics everything you thought it would be? Because I always think that politicians, probably most of them, hopefully, go into it for the right reasons. They want to change things, they want to do good. When you get into it, I'd imagine it's very frustrating, because it's it's ruled by committee, isn't it? Essentially, it's a massive, great committee, and it's very difficult to make any difference. So, does it drive you mad once you actually get into it?
Absolutely. It's very frustrating, because you think that you can have some power and you can move things forward, and it's very difficult to do. It's a combination of many different things. Media, is an essential part of politics as well. So it's very frustrating. And if you're in a party machine, you're really sunk. You've got to work within that party machine. Which is why I actually personally think that this country would be better off with far more independents elected to Parliament, people who are not answerable to party machines, and then you've got all the lobbyists as well involved with the party machines.
What do you think of career politicians?
Absolutely hate them. Now, I've worked in politics for quite a long time. I also worked in America. I worked the Schwarzenegger campaign in America. So I've worked in politics quite a while, but I did have jobs beforehand. I did manage a supermarket. I did work for Lloyd's. So I have actually had real jobs.
You've been in the real world.
I have been in the real world.
And I think, as we've discussed, you have quite a lot in your background, don't you? You have quite a lot to draw on.
Yeah, and to grow up in a council estate disadvantage where money was tight and having to work up from that, I understand, and I think that's why I have this sense of justice, frustration, and I get annoyed by councils and areas of authority taking for granted people. I get really frustrated, and that's why I feel this need to represent people, and I absolutely enjoy it.
It's quite easy though in opposition, isn't it, or just to be a single issue party and demand a referendum.
Absolutely.
If you won and got a referendum, what would you do?
Well, I've actually showed in my first term how I've actually moved the debate by collecting that petition and forcing David Cameron to the dispatch box when he wanted to stop banging on about Europe. I can actually show something positive. I've actually moved this debate on. And I actually think in one more term I can move this forward a bit more. If by 2019 that I have failed and we haven't had a referendum, I wouldn't seek a third term in European Parliament. I would only seek election for something if I thought I could possibly do something. And I think there's more for me to achieve in the European Parliament. As I've said, as an independent source, and you've got the booklet in front of you with the source, it actually shows I'm far ahead of the Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem and UKIP MEPs in this region for the work that I do representing in the Employment Committee, trying to get investment, trying to get jobs here. And that's what I do in the European Parliament. And I think I'm good for another 5 years.
And also, would you campaign more for transgender equality? Because I mentioned this to you while one of the songs was playing. It does seem to be one of the areas left that it seems okay for the media to have a pop at people who are transsexual. You see it often, don't you, in the papers? They'll make sort of snidey little nudge and a wink gags about people who are transgender. Do you think that's...
Transgender, transsexual, it's very different terminology. Not necessarily. I represent everyone. I don't want to be a politician that kind of represents only a certain sector of society. I need to be there. If everyone elects me, I should be representing everything. I don't really want to become a spokesperson. I want to actually show. Wouldn't it be fantastic if we lived in a society that actually person's sexuality, their gender, the colour of their skin was meaningless? And I absolutely hate positive discrimination. Absolutely despise it, because I hate discriminations of all kinds, because discrimination leads to a victim, whether it's positive discrimination or negative discrimination, it still creates a victim. And I feel passionately about that. I want to represent everyone in the European Parliament for the next 5 years, showing what I can do, represent them, trying to create jobs, trying to create investment, and hopefully forcing this referendum that will decide our future as a country.
And stand-up comedy as well, Nikki. You do a bit of that as well.
The joke about that was, it was supposed to be a joke for me to actually do it. And the first line of that was, the joke is that I'm actually here. Because I'm not a comedian, seriously, I'm not. And we just thought we'd have a laugh and say we were going to do it. And then it took on a life of itself. And we actually had quite a lot of people.
This was at the Edinburgh Festival, wasn't it?
This year.
Yeah.
It was just an idea that was flipped around. and then all of a sudden I'm in Edinburgh doing it.
Did it work every night? Or was there a night when you died?
I only did a one-off.
Oh, okay, it was a one-off.
It was just a one-off.
Any moments where it died?
No, I thought it was actually quite good, and it got good reviews. Did it have any
hecklers?
No, it got it was absolutely amazing, because normally most shows on the Edinburgh Festival get no reviews. I actually had about 3 or 4 positive reviews, and also raised about £30 for Help for Heroes.
Yeah.
The average audience in Edinburgh is about 6. I think I had about 28 people turn up. And the joke was that I wasn't supposed to be doing it.
Actually, for the Fringe, that is an enormous audience, isn't it? That's like playing Wembley Stadium, 28 people at a comedy show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Could I just say that if people want to get the book, they can get it at juniorspress.org. Is that naughty of me to say?
Good plug.
Thank you.
Remind us what it's called again.
Never Give Up by Juniors Press.
Lovely to meet you. Thanks for coming in and talking so openly.
Pleasure.
And I'll just leave you with this, because we've had a text here for you from Bruna. Just listen to Nikki Sinclaire. Just want to say what a lovely, intelligent and sensible person she is. Nikki for PM. So
that's nice.
So you've got 28 people. 28 people came to see you, and there's one vote for you at least to be Prime Minister. There we are.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Pleasure.